right, welcome everybody. This is the subcommittee meeting for House File 978. This is a bill having to do with the production and administration of psilocybin. It would create a new code chapter, 124F, for the purpose of cultivating, licensing, and administering psilocybin. I'm Senator Jeff Taylor. I'll be chairing the meeting today. We have Senator Reichman and Senator Quirmbach with us as well. Would either of my colleagues like to say something at the beginning? Okay, so they will hold their comments to the end. Looks like we have quite a few people online. We're going to hear from the folks in the room that wish to speak first, but if you are online, I would ask you to raise your electronic hand, and in a few minutes we will get to you and call on you. And I do think I'm actually going to start with Representative John Wills, however. Yes.
If I may, it looks like we have several people online, so we do need to keep comments brief.
Oh, well, that is true. Yeah, good point. And we'll see how many, wish to speak up online too. They may just be monitoring. But Representative Wills, this is a bill I believe you introduced and the House passed. So I'll let you make some opening comments first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me give you just like a Reader's Digest version of the bill because it's like a pretty big bill for Iowa. What it does is it allows for production, creation of the product, storage, destruction of the product. It forms a board. Now with an amendment, the Senate has moved the board, the new board into the medical marijuana board. So they're now combined, but as 4 new members. And then requires that this product must be dispensed and used in a controlled environment with a trained counselor that is trained in psilocybin counseling and that sort of thing. So in a nutshell, that is what the bill does. Here's why the bill. I'm the last person that people thought would run something like this, but I saw the statistics. I see the facts. 82% of the people who are treated with psilocybin that have PTSD have improved or cured symptoms. That's a number that we can't ignore. 82% are cured or have significantly improved conditions. That is undeniable. And when you look at the other option is to be on life-altering, mind-altering drugs for the rest of your life. This is a much better alternative. We have people already traveling, spending thousands of dollars going outside of the state doing this. This offers an alternative for folks to do it here in the state. Do you want?
Sorry. Amy Campbell, represent the Iowa Behavioral Health Association, which are the state's substance use and mental health providers, treatment providers, sorry. And we are opposed to the bill. We think the bill is premature. The science is really just starting on this. We're at the early stages of scientific research on the impacts, and we are fortunate in the state to have the University of Iowa being one of the pilot sites doing this research. I know I have some members on that board, so I will let them speak to more of the specifics about it, but we really feel that this is putting really the cart before the horse in creating a manufacturing process in place before the science has really proven it out. I will say there are a lot of studies that show MDMA has had really good research on PTSD, and they're further out in their research than psilocybin is. So we're really at the very beginnings of that research. So that's where our opposition is. We do think that there's a lot of promise there. We just don't want to get ahead of the science. Thank you.
Hello, Seth Brown on behalf of the Iowa Medical Society. We represent 6,000 physicians, residents, and medical students across the state. We're registered undecided on the bill. It is really important to us to ensure that patients receive the care that they need and appropriate treatment. And psilocybin, as mentioned, has shown some promise in very controlled clinical studies. We did receive outreach from members that are involved in UI Psychedelic Research Program that conducts clinical trials on psilocybin used for substance use disorder. They express some concerns about the bill currently as drafted, mostly ensuring that the appropriate guardrails are there and that the clinical backing is there for providers as it relates to dosing and things like that. So they're just kind of questions from the provider side of things. If it does move forward, if this bill does advance, I would say one thing that we would definitely want to see is ensuring that there is a physician on site as opposed to on call as it's currently drafted in the bill. I think it's good that it is, in a therapy setting, but we do feel like we need to have a physician there to make sure that they oversee that process because it is a powerful substance. Thank you.
I'm Dane Schuman, I represent MedFarm Iowa. We're registered undecided on this bill. I'm here because within it, there's a preference for articulated in the bill for a manufacturer of cannabis to be able to win a license to produce psilocybin also. And so that's gotten us interested in some of its provisions and perhaps some of how the economics of it might work. And so being the Ways and Means Committee, we have some thoughts on what you might do with the fees to make it, I guess, economically viable for a producer to be in this space, because there will be, though it will be very helpful, I imagine, for those that need it. There will not be a very large patient base, and so it'd be important to keep the fees down as much as you can. In that flavor, there are some provisions that have fees to the department going back to the general fund. And our experience with the cannabis program is that the department probably needs to keep those in order to administer the program. There is a license fee that will undoubtedly be used to fund the department's operation of the program, but that can be changed. And so our experience with the cannabis program is that oftentimes those can go up quite a bit if the department has insufficient revenue to keep it operating. We have some other finer points on this, these set of topics. If the bill were to move forward, we'd be very interested in sharing those. One other example I would give is there's a statutory requirement. It would be statutory with this bill that the tracking system be real time. Our experience with the cannabis program is that that's a very expensive proposition to have that happen. There's other ways to do that that are really just as effective if you have operators that you trust, and I suspect the department would get those should this bill become law. Those are things that the department has to pay a third party for in order to administer those, and the contracts are pretty pricey for real-time tracking. So just in that spirit, there would be some commentary we would offer should it move forward to make it better and make it economically viable. And so we're registered undecided and look forward to continued discussions.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Jake Frederickson. I'm representing Compass Pathways. We're currently registered undecided on the bill. Compass is a pharmaceutical company that is currently undergoing FDA trials for synthetic psilocybin that we are manufacturing. Our prescribed treatment is being evaluated by the FDA that requires administering the drug in a single dose in a medical setting where the patient is monitored and under our care. We don't want to interfere with Representative Will's process that he set up in the legislation. We just ask that you would include an FDA approved version as well. If the bill advances, I can share some language with you all on how that would work, but free to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Haley Hook, Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, just monitoring. We just had one question in section 22. We are mentioned for rules. Didn't know what our role, I guess, would be. So that's really the only question that we have.
Thank you, everyone who spoke in the room. Looks like we have 4 hands raised online. We're going to start with Zach, if you wish to unmute.
Thank you. Chairman Taylor and members of the subcommittee. My name is Zach Federico, and I serve as the director of the Veterans and Military Affairs Task Force at the American Legislative Exchange Council. Thank you for the opportunity to share ALEC's nonpartisan research and analysis as you consider this legislation to create a regulated access program for psilocybin-assisted therapy. The ALEC Veterans and Military Affairs Task Force is a nonpartisan group of over 100 state legislators, business leaders, and policy experts who collaborate to develop model policies that support our nation's veterans, service members, and military families. In December, the task force voted unanimously to adopt the Therapeutic Psilocybin Act as model policy. This action reflects a broad trend across the states. Utah, Oregon, Colorado, and New Mexico have already enacted regulated access programs. And this year, several other states, including Iowa, New Hampshire, West Virginia, Washington, Missouri, New York, Massachusetts, and Minnesota are considering similar legislation. These regulated access programs do not legalize recreational psilocybin use. Instead, they respond to a growing body of research suggesting that psilocybin-assisted therapy may offer therapeutic benefits for post-traumatic stress disorder, major depressive disorder, and substance use disorder, and other neurological conditions when delivered in controlled clinical settings. In states that have enacted these policies, the results have been encouraging. In Oregon, more than 40,000 psilocybin products have been sold for medicinal use, with fewer than 30 calls for emergency services. A recent real-world study from the Oregon program found significant improvements in depression, anxiety, and general well-being. For veterans, first responders, and others struggling with treatment-resistant mental health conditions, the Therapeutic Psilocybin Act offers a responsible path forward. It allows patients who have not found relief through traditional treatments to access emerging therapies while maintaining clear guardrails that prioritize patient safety, provider accountability, and legislative oversight. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have. Zach, where's the VA on this in this process? Are they even considering it?
Yes, the VA is recently announced plans for multi-year studies, but of course those are going to take a little while to get out. But they are investing in investigating the treatment.
Hey, in addition to that, because I get probably the subject matter expert on this. Also, separate legislation that was I don't think it's being considered this year with us, but the hyperbaric chambers, are they also continuing that? And that just parallels the PTSD treatment.
Yes, the VA currently offers hyperbaric under their integrated medicine program. So hyperbaric is available for most veterans already.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up, we've got, is it Laurel? Yes, Laurel.
Yes, it is Laurel. Yes, thank you very much. My name is Laurel Muting, and good afternoon, Chairman Taylor and members of the subcommittee. As I said, my name is Laurel Muting. I'm the Prevention Director at Heartland Family Service. And so we are, opposed to this bill. We feel, like as Amy had said earlier, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here. We really believe there is a lot of promising research going on, including studies here at the University of Iowa. Which is really awesome that we have that in our own state. But I think those doctors are even urging a little bit of caution when it comes to what we're doing with psilocybin and PTSD. And so I think it's important for us to be cautious in the respect of public health and safety. I also think it's really important for us to make sure that this is a treatment-driven industry and not a profit-driven industry. And I think when you combine that with the CBD board and the medical cannabis program in Iowa, I think that gets a little bit, that's a wavy line, right? That if it's going to be profit driven or if it's really going to be treatment driven. And so I just really think it's important. Like, we typically don't legalize medicine by popular vote. We typically don't legalize medicine by legislative vote. And so I think this is really important for us to get it right when it comes to this kind of thing. I also think combining it with the medical CBD board is concerning as well. And I don't know if anyone in the room was at the medical CBD board meeting last Friday, but Dr. Schreck was, and he's a member of the medical CBD board. And I just wanted to, make sure that his concern that he shared last Friday was shared with you guys. He said it's not necessarily a complaint, but an observation that if the psilocybin bill passes and 4 board members are added to their board, to the CBD board, to make recommendations on psilocybin in Iowa, then the industry would assign someone to to the board to represent their interests, and that will change the integrity of the CBD board. Right now, that board is made up of physicians only, and they're recommending on medicine, and so and medical conditions. And so I think that's really important to point out as you're thinking about how we move forward in Iowa. And also, I just kind of want to touch on something that the representative from MedFarm said about the real-time tracking. And that is expensive. That's seed to sale. That's what he's talking about. And we track all of our medical cannabis in Iowa from seed to sale. And so you, at any one time, you can go into the system and see where it is. And if we're doing that with an unapproved FDA substance, another substance that's not FDA approved and it's not regulated by the FDA, then we should also be requiring the same kind of standards of seed to sale. And so again, what we're doing is creating an industry without necessarily the demand for it, and that's going to increase pushing the substance. That's going to increase the need for profit for these companies that are investing in Iowa. And so again, I really feel like this needs to be treatment driven and not profit driven. So I think that's really important for us not to create another industry in the state that's really going to be more concerned about profit than treating people who have some of these medical conditions.
Thank you. Next up is Caitlin.
Hi, thanks so much for allowing me to testify. Caitlin Becker with Reason Foundation. Reason's a nonprofit think tank that advocates for policies for public health and consumer access. And we are in strong support of this bill today. I know there's been some concerns about putting the cart before the horse, and I just want to say that, this is a tried and tested policy at this point. We have 4 well-established programs ongoing in the United States for psilocybin access in Colorado, Oregon, New Mexico, and Utah. New Jersey is just starting up their program. They just passed legislation to do so last month. And Minnesota, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire are all considering legislation that's similar to Iowa's. And they will likely, 1 or 2 of them will probably adopt legislation this year. So it definitely is something that has been studied, that we have experience with, and that there are good safety and treatment protocols already established across the United States. And, I do understand that people are worried about profit and worried about companies getting involved. And we are too. We do think that this is the most important thing to be patient-centered. And the reality is that these programs are so important because they treat intractable mental health conditions that just do not respond to traditional treatments. So I would recommend that, if folks on the committee haven't had the chance to speak with a veteran or a first responder who's been through this treatment, I would really urge you to do so. And Reason would be happy to connect you with anyone if you're interested in it. I've spoken to a lot of folks across the country who've been on a cocktail of SSRIs for years and years and have had no improvement. And then after 1 or 2 sessions with psilocybin, they've improved drastically. So Reason is here to answer any questions if you have any, but very much appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. And Leslie.
Good afternoon, Leslie Carpenter with Iowa Mental Health Advocacy, and we are registered as undecided on this bill. I do echo the same concerns as Amy Campbell mentioned, as well as Laurel. I think we're getting ahead of the science. This is a subject matter, of course, which we follow pretty closely. And the FDA is there for a reason. They are the organization at the federal level that is in charge of reviewing science with the appropriate professionals and research scientists to decide whether it is in fact appropriate and safe for people across the United States. In section 24, line 15, number 1, it talks about the people that are either recommending or providing psilocybin not being subject to the federal law or regulation that prohibits recommending, prescribing, possessing, or dispensing psilocybin. There's a reason we have the FDA. I will tell you that if we are hoping for the FDA to move forward with approval sooner, it is very possible to advocate and directly affect FDA decision-making. In the space of prescribing clozapine for people with schizophrenia, we had an advocacy movement across the country which removed the REMS requirement that had been found to be a huge barrier to treatment. I think Iowa getting ahead potentially at the direction of trying to produce more revenue and direct profit ahead of patient safety is of concern that we should definitely be considering very, very seriously. Thank you very much.
Leslie, I'm sorry, I didn't catch. Who do you represent?
Iowa Mental Health Advocacy.
Thank you. Jasmine, you are up.
Hi, good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Jasmine Owen. I am here in support of HS 978 on behalf of Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions. This legislation establishes a regulated state framework for the production and supervised administration of psilocybin by qualified providers for therapeutic use. This important initiative represents a meaningful step towards addressing the severe mental health challenges facing many Iowa residents, particularly veterans, by creating a strictly regulated framework for psilocybin services and advancing the responsible use of emerging evidence-informed treatment options. Veterans are one of the most vulnerable populations when it comes to mental health. Since 2001, over 125,000 veterans have died by suicide, and 29% of global war on terrorism veterans are known to suffer from post-traumatic stress. The disproportionate incidence of PTSD among veterans is also a driver of the disproportionate incidence of suicide among them. We lose no less than 17, and by some estimates, as many as 44 veterans to suicide every day, at nearly double the rates of non-veteran Americans lost to suicide each year. Clearly, current mental health treatment options available to our veterans through VA healthcare facilities have been far from universally effective. Our veterans and their families need access to alternative therapies that address the complexity of the challenges they face following service to our nation. As demonstrated by ongoing medical and scientific research, psychedelic therapies are rapidly emerging as an effective tool in treating PTSD, traumatic brain injury, treatment-resistant depression, substance use disorder, anxiety, and other mental health indications that fuel the disproportionate rates of suicide among the veteran population. Founded in 2019, Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions is a 501c3 nonprofit organization working to end the veteran suicide epidemic by providing resources, research, and advocacy for U.S. military veterans seeking psychedelic-assisted therapies for traumatic brain injury, PTSD, addiction, and other health conditions. VETS envisions a world where our veterans have access to the most advanced healthcare options to heal from the mental and physical wounds of war. VETS has supported over 1,100 U.S. Special Operations Forces veterans and veteran spouses to access psychedelic-assisted therapy treatment abroad, paired with preparation and integration coaching through our Foundational Healing Grants program. HF 978 does not legalize or broadly decriminalize psilocybin. Instead, it takes a responsible approach by establishing a regulated framework for the production and supervised administration of psilocybin by qualified providers under state oversight. The legislation creates a system that includes licensing standards, registration requirements, safety requirements, and appropriate safeguards for participants and practitioners, helping ensure access occurs in a controlled and therapeutic setting. By advancing a carefully regulated framework, Iowa has the opportunity to join a growing number of states exploring innovative approaches to mental health care while prioritizing patient safety and responsible oversight. With bipartisan support, states across the nation are recognizing the need to act urgently, and Iowa has a unique opportunity to continue leading by example with a comprehensive, forward-thinking approach. By enacting this legislation, the Hawkeye State will not only honor its commitment to those who have served, but also set a precedent for responsible, research-driven policymaking that could save countless lives. Thank you for your leadership and commitment to our nation's heroes. That stands ready to assist in any way possible to support the successful implementation of this vital initiative. I appreciate the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised online. Thank you, everyone who spoke online or spoke in the room, expressing your point of view. We are going to return to the table here. We're going to start with you, Senator Quirmbach, for closing thoughts.
I'll just say in closing, I'd like to advance this. I think so many times in the medical community, we see they treat symptoms and they don't cure the problem. My father's being treated for PTSD from Vietnam. I've got 2 combat tours and 29 years in the Marine Corps. So I've lost 2 brothers last year, fellow Marines, to suicide. One did have a terminal illness, but I'm glad to see this advance and see an alternative and a natural way of treating an issue instead of keeping people just on long-term medication. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Quirmbach?
Well, I'm also inclined to move this forward. I am sympathetic to some of the questions that have been raised, and maybe we would consider some alterations here. The idea of having a physician actually present rather than on call seems worthy of consideration. Some of the other ideas are things that we could explore. The emphasis should be on treatment and not on profit. We need to set our fees and our access both to the providers and to the patients appropriately. I do have a lot of sympathy to all of our people who have served in uniform and elsewhere, various types of uniforms. If there's a possibility here that we can move forward with something to give them a useful treatment. There's a downside to anything that you can prescribe. We would need to be very, very careful about that. But it seems to me that what's being proposed here is administration of this drug under very careful circumstances. The individuals receiving it would have to jump through a number of hoops to qualify, and then it would only be administered in a very carefully controlled setting. So, as far as getting ahead of the science is concerned, as I think back about our experience with medical marijuana and other substances, it has seemed to me to be the case that some of our regulatory agencies have been a little slow to move forward because they were afraid of the politics of it. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure that one is necessarily more inhibitive than the other. And I wish I could say that the CDC and the FDA had the same reputation that they did a year and a half ago, but they don't. Moving forward with this, I think is a good idea. I do note that there's a directive here for the HHS to conduct a study regarding the use of other potentially psychedelic, God, I grew up in the 60s. I should be able to pronounce that, psychedelic compounds other than psilocybin. I presume that that's in what's intended there is a literature review. They're not looking for volunteers. I'm not interested in volunteering, although, I don't know, 24 years in the legislature, PTSD might be relevant. But yes, let's move forward with this. I think that this is a worthy effort.
Well, thank you, Senator Quirmbach. I will say that I am also interested in moving this bill forward, and I'm going to sign as well. I'm going to recommend amendment. I do think the bill probably needs to be tweaked a little bit. I want to thank Representative Wills for bringing the bill forward. I do have a quick question for Jake.
Yes.
There is an amendment that you have suggested, and in the email from Christopher Rance, he said we don't want to interfere with the process that's trying to be set up, but we're asking that if we would include language that would have the FDA approved version as well.
Yes.
And so my question for you is, would that amendment, would that expand the scope of the bill, or would it restrict the scope of the bill? In other words, would it restrict it to only FDA approved, or would it?
We believe them to be parallel.
Okay.
So the Representative language would continue. Sorry.
So it wouldn't replace it or restrict
That is correct. It would just allow an FDA approved synthetic version. Yes.
Okay.
A majority of folks would, a good portion of folks would need insurance to access a drug such as this, and this would give them the ability to use insurance moving forward on something synthetic and FDA approved.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I have one more thing to add, if I may. And Jasmine, Owen, thank you for bringing that to our attention. This is an epidemic. 22 a day. 22 service members commit suicide. I assume the on-call we meant on-site because we're talking about a clinic setting. So I assume that's an easy fix.
The intent was an on-site doctor, but not necessarily a doctor in the room with the patient, but a certified counselor that has familiarity with psilocybin should be in the room with the
So they'd
patient.
be on site, not on call, but on
Correct.
site
Correct.
at the clinic facility. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree. I will just mention too, in terms of the FDA, I did I received an email from Carl Olson referring to the um, uh, MCB and the idea of like, well, do we want to put some kind of language in here that would set up some type of a legal task force to obtain a federal exemption for the use of psilocybin. That's something, I would like to give a little more thought to. And I will also mention that my two specific concerns have to do with the language of the bill where the qualified therapy provider location is defined and then the qualified therapy provider is defined as well. And the reason I have concerns about those two things is that the therapy provider location, it doesn't exactly spell it out on page 4 that it is a clinic, and maybe that's the implication. But I'm wondering if the way that it's worded isn't broad enough that could include something that isn't even a medical kind of clinic setting, and so I would not want to unintentionally move something forward that's going to allow for recreational use of psilocybin rather than something that's specifically for health purposes. And then the other aspect in terms of the qualified therapy provider, there may be good reason for this, but the definition seems a little broad. It ranges everything from a physician and a surgeon to a psychologist and a social worker. And no disrespect intended to social workers, but social workers do not do the same thing that a medical doctor or a DO does. And so I'm wondering if that shouldn't be tightened up a little bit as well. And clarification that's already been mentioned on call, on site, in the room, there are differences there. And so I'm wondering if that's something that we shouldn't be looking at as well. So having said all that, I think this actually poses a lot of promise. I don't mind getting out a little bit ahead of the FDA, whether we're thinking about the FDA under the current administration or in the past. FDA has not always been, even itself, as many scientists and good personnel that they employ at the top levels, like all federal government agencies, they're not immune from for-profit pressures. In political science, we call it agency capture. And so even that can sometimes, in addition to political pressures, can weigh on federal regulatory agencies, either green lighting or red lighting various treatments. So having said all that, again, thank you everyone for being here. And I am going to recommend with amendment. Yes. Yes. So thank you, everyone. This concludes our meeting.